contracts with two large hospital organizations, one in the National Grid load zone, one on the Eversource load zone. So this project would go to it's called SEMA. I don't know what SEMA stands for, Southeastern Mass load zone. Peter may know better than me. So we sell electrons to that company, to those companies by virtue of an agreement that runs in parallel to our lease. It's a 20-year agreement. We also will acquire solar renewable energy credits under what will be SREC 3. That project hasn't, that program has not been fully adopted by the Commonwealth as of right now. SREC 2 is ending. SREC 3, which by virtue of where we are in terms of the process, will fall into SREC 3. And we move forward from there. We take those SRECs, we monetize them, we sell them in the open market. That's our revenue stack. Our expenses are what our expenses are. We will use local contractors, local electricians to install the facility. Our modules come from either Canada or China. You use either Canadian Solar or Jinko panels. Our inverters come from a company called SunGrow, which is based in China as well. We use a racking system, one of two types. One's RBI, it's based in Cincinnati, Ohio. The other is Patriot Solar, and I think they're based in Columbus, Ohio, but I'm not 100% sure. Both have been, all that equipment has been vetted by UL. All that equipment has been vetted by the Mass DEP. It is in use hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of gigawatts all around the world. This is not stuff that just fell off the back of a truck and we purchased and put out on a field. This is equipment that has been operating and working and performing in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts since 2010, I think was when the first large-scale, utility-scale solar project came into being. So that's that. The transformers are made by General Electric. The equipment that interfaces between where we connect to the National Grid system is actually equipment that's procured by National Grid. We pay for it. So all of those kinds of things are what we're talking about here. We can go through character of neighborhood, we can go through the different 5 or 6 items, and we can give you our point of view. And our point of view is going to be slightly different than yours. We see it differently. We just do see it differently. So again, I can't say it more directly. If there's no room to negotiate, we'll go through the process and we'll see where we end up. But we'd rather find an amicable solution with everybody and make sure that everybody's satisfied and moving forward.
I have a question, if I may.
Sure.
Did you look at the Main Street property where the plant was?
No. We're a landfill solar developer. That's what we do. So we look at landfills and we develop on landfills. So that's not a landfill that I believe it's a former factory site.
Well, the point is that I believe it's about probably at least the same acreage. It's already zoned properly. And with a 6 or 8 foot fence with your low-level solar,
It's already on.
to me, that's an ideal place. Less clearing, and you don't harm anybody, you don't harm the animals.
I don't own the real estate, so I can't speak to it.
I think it should, when you're talking about leeway back and forth and trying to negotiate, I'm telling you that the Main Street property is probably a good location.
Thank you.
And that is owned by Zenith.
It's owned by Zenith.
Owned by Zenith.
Zeneca owns
It's
it.
industrial, it'll be site plan approval only, no special permit required.
Probably less
And almost
expensive.
nobody would see it. Almost no one would see it because it's surrounded by trees.
Other comments? Do you have anything to add?
Well, we've taken in a lot of information tonight, and I'll be moving forward. I'll be working with Frank to submit some revised plans, probably a planting plan, and likely a revised impact statement, and I'm sure there's some other things too. But we'll be working together to get some revised information into you.
Okay, thanks. Before we move on, Mr. Costa, could you, I just learned recently that the Dover Amendment has some provisions for solar panel installations. Are you aware of how that all comes in? Could you explain it to me and perhaps to the rest of the folks so that we understand all the different variables, let's say?
Of course. So the Dover Amendment, which is a portion of the Zoning Act that has Massachusetts, Chapter 40A of the Massachusetts General Laws. And Section 3 of that act is commonly known as the Dover Amendment. And the Dover Amendment provides a variety of protections for certain types of uses. You see it frequently with religious uses and educational uses, which can be cited essentially overriding local zoning. Zoning exempt or subject only to a non-discretionary process like a site plan review. In short, a board can't say no generally to those types of facilities. There is a provision in Chapter 48, Section 3 that addresses solar facilities. Now, what the town has opted to do, the town of Dayton and many other communities have done with those other sorts of Dover Amendment uses, like educational uses or religious uses, is they've restricted them to certain locations. And so the Dover Amendment doesn't have a great deal of applicability with respect to this project, because if you didn't have a zoning bylaw in existence, if you didn't have a section of your zoning bylaw that specifically addressed solar photovoltaic installations, and there was no category into which these types of facilities could easily fall, one could argue, an applicant could argue, that you're required to permit those facilities anywhere that the applicant so chooses, subject only to a non-discretionary process like a site plan review, something you can't say no to. But that's not the case here, because the town has opted to adopt the bylaw and has opted to allow these sorts of facilities by right in some locations, subject to that non-discretionary site plan review process. You've opted in this particular district, a residential district, in fact it's the only district that you've opted to do this, to allow them, but only by way of special permit. That's entirely lawful. And your special permit criteria, pursuant to Chapter 48, Section 9, which is the special permit section of the Zoning Act, is entirely discretionary. And that's why you have the general standard that's quoted in the bylaw, where you've got to essentially weigh the project or the proposal against the community needs and impact on neighborhood. But you've also got the more specific criteria of your bylaw contained in Section 5320 that addresses things like traffic circulation and consistency with neighborhood character, et cetera, some of the items that have been cited to by several of the residents tonight. So this particular project is not a Dover Amendment project. It's a project that's being submitted to you pursuant to two separate processes and two separate public hearings, which are running concurrently, I presume. One is the site plan review process, which is a non-discretionary process, but that's paired with a special permit process, which is entirely discretionary. So the long story short is, you have the ability, if you determine, and the applicant appears to have conceded this in saying that it's going to sort of live or die by the public process, you have the ability, if you so choose, to deny the project, so long as you make findings that the criteria of your bylaw pertaining to special permits are not satisfied. And I would advise you, of course, in guiding you through the process and presumably in assisting you in writing whatever decision you come to, I would emphasize, not just tonight, but in future session or sessions of the public hearing, to at some point walk through those criteria and to verbalize yourselves whether or not you believe the criteria are met. And obviously backing into that, you have to keep that in mind as you're completing the process in terms of what information you need. So you had mentioned, sir, the need for a development impact statement. That's something that's not required of every applicant. It's not really a necessity for every project. There are some special permits for projects that are on a much more modest scale than what we've got here, and you would maybe not require a development impact statement. But you have the ability to require that statement here. The applicant did submit something that was referenced earlier in our meeting tonight called a quote-unquote impact statement, but what it really was more of a narrative explaining how the site plan review and the special permit criteria have been satisfied in its view. That's not the same thing as the development impact statement that's required under 5340, which is more specific, and you've got a whole list of items that need to be addressed, and it needs to be completed by an interdisciplinary team, including an engineer and a surveyor, et cetera. If that's what you're asking for, you should certainly make that clear to the applicant tonight so that that progress can be made between now and the next session of the hearing. Similarly, if the board believes, or any members of the board believe, that to make a determination with respect to one of these criteria, social, economic, community needs, traffic flow and safety, neighborhood character, you need either additional information from the applicant, or you need some additional peer review of your own, which of course you could require the applicant to pay for under 4453G, you should also make the applicant aware of that now too and get those consultants on board. Obviously, you've got Peter already having done an initial review of the project, and he'll continue on to review future iterations. But that's what the board should keep in mind as it works through this process, start to finish.
Thanks.
Can I add one thing?
Sure, please.
I was going to say, and then I thought better of it because it seemed that the conversation was maybe going in a different direction. I heard that the applicant say just a moment ago when he began responding to some of the comments and concerns that were raised by residents, you know, we're not interested in jamming the project down your throats. I wrote it in my notes, we will respect the planning board's decision. But then I also heard a few minutes later, you know, but we're gonna go through the process and we're gonna do what we need to do once the planning board makes a decision. So I wanna be sure that the board reconciles that, or ask the applicant to reconcile it, because I think I'm hearing two different things. I've had applicants come to boards, wasn't my project, I was before the Weston Planning Board a few weeks back, and there was a well-known developer in the Boston metropolitan area who was before the board with a potential affordable housing projects that are generally known as being quite controversial. But they were before them informally, and the potential applicant said to the board, we're gonna pitch this proposal, we've engineered our plans, and we wanna get a sense from you as to whether you as board members are generally supportive of this. Saying something very similar to what we heard tonight, we're not jamming this down your throat. If you don't want an affordable housing development here, we will walk away. We've invested some money in it, but we wanna know we have your support. We're not gonna make an application, we're not gonna pursue an application if we don't have the support of the board and of the neighborhood. That's different than saying, I've got an application before you, I don't wanna jam it down your throat, but if you're not supportive of it generally, I'm still gonna push for a decision, and then I'm gonna go through the process, which means, you know, the applicant availing itself of its legal rights. And that's entirely the right of the applicant. I'm not suggesting the applicant shouldn't do that or can't do that. That's the applicant's right, due process, zoning act procedures in Massachusetts. But I think we should get a sense as to what's being asked of the board. I don't know any of your positions on this. I've had conversations with one of your members just in preparation for tonight's meeting, but I've not had conversations with the others of you. I don't know what your personal preferences are with respect to the site or these sorts of projects. But if the consensus on the board, or at least a couple of members of the board, if you've got a 4-member board acting on this project, it's a special permit, the applicant needs a unanimous decision to approve the project. I think that it should be made known to the applicant that the applicant doesn't have the support, and there's nothing that can be done for the applicant to get that support, so that the applicant can make a decision whether it wants to still proceed with the process, or whether the applicant is saying, again, don't want to jam it down your throat, we're gonna walk away. Not suggesting the applicant doesn't pursue its rights, but I think that that's something that the board should be aware of. And you know, we heard it said tonight, I don't want to waste my time, I don't want to waste the neighbor's time, I don't want to waste the board's time. Well, you know, let's not, if the applicant isn't going to get the support that it needs from the board.
We have shown that we are willing to work with the abutters in the town, and that we've already conceded on the setbacks to the property lines. So in my opinion, we are willing to work with the town on this. And there's more that moving forward, I think the next time we meet with you, we'll have a planting plan in front of you, so.
But with that said, I sense that we don't have a majority. So that's based on my just sense of the way things are going here too. So again, we can, if you give me some indication, we can end this tonight if in fact someone is gonna vote no. I mean, again, I've said this, you know, simple as that.
Could I know they're asking for some indication now. I would think that we've been delayed and people have not shown up for meetings. I don't feel that.
We've never not shown up for a meeting, by the way.
No.
Well, with 24-hour notice or
They just
48 to
continue.
24 hours.
We
that-
continued on one
that you
occasion,
cancel.
and then the next occasion, it didn't find its way to the agenda. So, and when I realized, Scott, that it wasn't on the agenda, I contacted Heidi, and we realized that there was something went amiss. So I don't want it to think, everyone to believe it was us continuing. There was an error somewhere along the line.
Yeah, somehow I just feel like,
So, Mr. Costa, is there a way to informally poll the board? Or once polled, are we committed to that position?
You're not. I mean, I think board members can express, obviously, you're interacting with the applicant, you're asking questions, you can express your concerns with the project. And you know, Peter was just commenting to me and saying, you know, are we a bit premature? And well, yes, if the applicant was saying we could end this tonight by asking for a vote, if you don't have all the information you need, and yet you're going to deny the project, I'm going to advise you not to do that until you have the information you need to be sure, because I'm going to be defending that approval, denial, whatever it is. If there's a challenge, if it's approved, the neighbors can appeal it. So I'm going to be defending it one way or the other if it proceeds to litigation. So I want you to have the information you need. I was just saying, it sounded to me like what I heard for a moment there was, we don't want to jam this down your throat. If you're not buying into this, then we're going to walk away.
I'm gonna tell you right now, we are not proceeding to litigation based on an outcome. We're not in the business of litigating, we're in the business of developing solar projects. If the community doesn't want us, we're not gonna stay. We're not gonna be here. So we're not, I know you had a bad experience with a previous solar developer. That's not our style, that's not our game. We've been through this once with Peter. Peter knows our firm, knows our company. He's been to peer review in another community, he knows how we operate. I'm not interested in litigation. I happen to be a lawyer, I wasn't particularly good at it, so that's why I'm not being a lawyer. So I would like an informal sense, and if the answer is gonna be no, I just assume move on, and we'll stop wasting your time, stop wasting all these people's time, and I've got plenty to do. We'll move on to the next, project.
Well, I have no plan for calling a vote right now, but there is a considerable lack of information concerning the development impact statement, and I believe that it would take a considerable amount of effort on your part for this board to be able to consider it for approval or denial. Stepping out of my role as the board chairman, I don't really like it. But going back into my role, I reserve my right to make a determination based on a lot more information.
I got it. Thank you.
I'll leave you with this, you should look at the Main Street property.
Thank you.
I feel the same way,
Fair enough. And Heidi, I didn't know how you feel. But thank you. And look, and again, to your point, I'm not offended. This is the process. I've said this from day one. You know what? It's been a great process. Everyone has been polite and respectful, and I appreciate that. And, it is what it is, as they say.
So would you like to
Main
continue
Street
your
would be a
public
matter of
hearing?
right too, huh?
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Now you're being put on the spot.
We need to continue it because we need to file
You
some
do.
sort of a letter to withdraw
Absolutely.
anyway. So let's continue and we'll move from there, but
Do you want the last meeting in November or the first meeting in December?
November's great.
November
There's
16th
somebody down there, I think, next to street.
Sir?
Thanks.
at 6 PM.
That's fine with us.
Oh, before we,
Paul Duwop from 578 Hart Street. You mentioned that you're not looking to disturb or, you're kind of going by what the town and the people say. I mean, I think from the turnout that's here every meeting and every time this comes up, should give you a sense of how the community and the town feels, the people.
I certainly know how your neighborhood feels. I don't know how the whole town feels, but I do know how you feel.
And you mentioned that the benefit to the solar array for us. I don't know of any benefit we have with the solar panels, other than maybe our taxes staying the same. But I'm speaking for myself, maybe I speak for others. Not that I want my taxes to go up, but I'd be willing to pay more taxes. I hope we don't get that on tape. Deer and the wildlife the way it is and preserved.
And I respect that. I'm not on your board of selectmen, so I can't raise your taxes. So, let them decide that issue.
So if I could just make one more suggestion, I know the applicant has suggested a potential withdrawal, but nevertheless continuance. I think it ought to be stated for the record that in the event that the matter continues, which is the applicant's right, that what the board's expecting, preferably a week or more in advance of its next meeting, would be a development impact statement, something that could be forwarded to Peter to get him to review it and provide a review, hopefully in advance of that meeting.
that is
Absolutely.
clearly what we want.
We got it. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you everyone for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion to continue the public hearing until when?
November 16th at 6 PM.
November 16th at 6 PM.
Should I hear a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen.
Good night, you guys.
All right, yeah, I gotta go. All right, thank you guys.
My bad.
Take care.
Yes, you are.
I guess I just.
Did you already tell them what you heard?
I don't know, I know that.
I should have tried.
It was,
Thank you guys. I'll have a count. The guy who's from the harbor. He's the add-on.
close to.
If it were the standards of the, not the DEP in the state, but the national level, the EPA environmental impact statement, it's generally, this is the process to produce. So to be done thoroughly, they've got a long, they're not gonna have it by that. They might have it 6 months. If the attorney said, it's an interdisciplinary.
It's a matter of right.
None of this is well, each one of these words in this, that's not these words, general topography, that's a long survey. Geological, that's a geology. Archaeological, that's another.
I wanted to say this in front of
People with master's degrees and PhDs, very expensive firms, it's a lot of information. And they may choose to withdraw based on that, or they may choose to proceed. I think, personally, I think there's enough there that's not as controversial as this, not just in the town, they're all over the place, that they would go somewhere else.
Well, he said one thing that I was totally unaware of. He said when they came over and she sold the farm. That was better than
Dunbar, down at like,
But first meeting starts at 6:30. With the Board of Health organization, and then he, no, you can have it, I got zoning bylaws.
Okay, well, I just wondered about that. That's what I was thinking.
Well, yeah,
If they've got to do
I don't know if I can get anything, I'll be a little late.
Thank you.
Good night, Mr. Minister. Thank you, you too.
This project.
Good night.
I just felt like that just. Well, you know, you give it out.
Don't be ignorant, I wouldn't be ignorant either.
You know what? Now that I've done all this research, I am appalled that our house is what I built. I mean,
Well, you
you
see-
coming in from town.
Well, you see, the thing is, before your house lots went in, there was supposed to be like a 68 development, so that's why your house.
I know, but you know, I'm thinking like, I would have thought that too. Good job, Sue. Thank you. I was gonna ask you. I get, well, I get, very,
Why doesn't somebody make a motion?
Hi, Mr. Benji. I'm Trina. I'm Carrie. I'm friends with your wife.
Yeah, right, yeah, I remember, yep.
She's on our cancer.
Yep.
Second?
I saw her the other day.
Oh, what the heck?
That's nice.
She went to the beach.
That's okay, I'm taking
Peter, a
tomorrow
motion
next
was
week.
made to adjourn.
but I had everything that's in my.
Would anyone like to second the motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn. I'm not a fool, then.
Second, it's been seconded.
Highlight.
All in favor?
Aye. You wanna
And
get-
on yours.
Go to adjourn.
Night, Gail.
Do you want it?
Night,
Oh, no, you didn't even use my.